this is the answer for number 15, and I know that it's on Classroom, but I wanted to go through an oral explanation with you because it's obviously, I think, difficult to read. So just quickly, here's what I did. First of all, I just copied down the graph. Woohoo! Then the sinusoidal axis was drawn in, it was given, and it's up 1. From the x-axis, this graph has been shifted up 1. So there is where I wrote up 1. And then from that sinusoidal axis to the high point, as well as the sinusoidal axis to the low point, it is a total distance of 4. So that makes the amplitude 4. Okay, so the rest of this is how do you figure out the period, how do you figure out the phase shift, etc. There are 4 ways that you can write a trig curve. You could write this as a reflected cosine curve. It starts at the bottom, goes up, and comes down. So that would be a reflected cosine curve. You can write it as a regular old cosine curve, which starts at the high point, goes down, and comes back up. You could also write it as a positive sine curve, which starts on the sinusoidal, goes up, goes down, and then back. You could also write it as a reflected sine curve, which would start at 7, go down, and I didn't continue the curve, but it would start at 7, go down, up, and then it would end, in this case, at 27. All of those have the same wavelength. Any single one of those curves has the same exact wavelength. From -8 to 12, that's a distance of 20. Remember, the period is the length of one curve. So from -8 up, down to 12, that's a distance of 20. From -3 up, down to 17, that's a distance of 20. From 2 down, up to 22, that's a distance of 20. So for all of them, the period is 20, regardless of which curve you choose. So that's the period. Therefore, 2 pi over b is 20. B is pi over 10. B is pi over 10. Okay, now the shift. The difference is, see here I wrote pi over 10, and then I wrote shift, question, cosine question, sine question, but 1, 4 pi over 10, 1, 4 pi over 10, 1, 4 pi over 10, woo, woo. Anyway, sorry, I got carried away. Let's say, and I did the first one I did in green, was the negative cosine curve. Negative cosine curve starts at -8, up, down, up and then back down. So if I'm going to write this graph using a negative cosine curve, so I put negative, again, it's been shifted up 1. The amplitude from sinusoidal to the high point is 4. Sinusoidal to the low point is 4 for all of them. Pi over 10 is what B is. If you choose a reflected cosine curve from the y-axis, it has been shifted left 8. Again, from the y-axis, this has been shifted left 8, hence plus 8. Remember, it's the opposite. If it's a shift right, then it's minus. If it's a shift left, then it's plus. Let's say you choose a positive cosine curve. Okay, so I did that in blue. So my positive cosine curve starts at 2, goes down and up. And again, starts at 2, goes down, up. So if I start at 2, from the y-axis, I have shifted right 2 units. Therefore, it's -2, it's -2. Okay, and then lastly, I didn't do a reflected sine curve. I didn't draw the whole graph, so I didn't do a reflected sine. But lastly, if you do a positive sine, okay, so positive sine, which is what I did in pink, starts on the axis, up, down, back to the axis, starts on the sinusoidal, up, down, back to the sinusoidal. From the y-axis, I have shifted left 3. From the y-axis, I have shifted left 3. Therefore, it's x plus 3. So that's I wanted to give you an oral explanation because I think just looking at the paper, it was a little bit confusing. All right, you guys, post on Classroom if you have questions.